Hello, mate.
How are you? All right?
Very good, buddy. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Not too bad. Been out for my morning run, so I'm good.
Oh, very nice, mate. Very nice. Glorious weather for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, who are you? What do you do? And what have you done?
So I'm Dave King. I operate Hampshire County Council Outdoor Centre in the New Forest. That's what I do for work. So outdoor education. So we have about 18 to 19,000 visitors there a year for overnight stays, school trips, Duke of Edinburgh camping, and things like that. Really.
Nice. And so how did you get into kind of outdoor lifestyle, like outdoor ed, like that world? How did you get into it?
Yeah, so combination of parents being keen walkers and so on. So a few trips with my dad pre getting into scouting, which from a young age doing the Cubs and Scout type sections, and then through that I got onto a camp which was like a patrol leaders camp out of Fernycross in the New Forest. So the leaders of the little troops in the scout groups are called a patrol leader, and they did a county one of those where all of the patrol leaders from different groups around the county of Hampshire came together, and a guy did a talk at that, Ross Park, who
Legend.
was leading a trip. Yeah, guy that's been instrumental in a lot of the expedition stuff that's happened through Hampshire Scouts for a number of years back to the 80s. He presented a trip to go to Nepal, and I must have been 14 or so at the time, and at the right age that I could go. So went home with a harebrained idea that I might go to Nepal at 15 years old. Told my mum and dad.
That's amazing. And like, so what did you have to do over that like time when you go, yeah, I want to go? Like, obviously that's a big old trip.
Yeah. So the training is always at least an 18-month lead in to an expedition like that, to try and bring the team together. So we base it around our UK training weekends. So where you can get the team together, and we go to mountainous areas of the UK, Scotland, North Wales, and so on. And really bring the team together. We do some quite standard team building type activities initially to get the team to know each other and be able to work together, and obviously build that up to like a week-long training in Scotland where we might sleep in a snow hole together, build them, dig them out together.
Nice.
Yeah, so obviously progressively ramp it up as you get closer to an expedition of 6 weeks when you're going to live with each other.
Yeah, I was going to say, and also Lake District versus Nepal are two very, very different things.
Yeah, that's right. But HSX kind of works on the motto of train hard, fight easy, which is like a military term, really. So we try and
so what
train
is
a lot
HSX harder. For those that don't know, what is HSX?
So Hampshire Scout Expeditions is an activity club that is based in Hampshire Scouting as an organisation, and set up to take Explorer Scouts on 4 to 6 week expeditions to developing world countries for adventurous activities, but also alongside that community work, and just going away for a prolonged period, which is normally something that sticks in a lot of people's memories for a long time, because certainly if you do it at that age group, 14 to 18, then it's at a period of their life where it is life-changing and propels them on to want to travel more potentially in the future, or think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, and obviously that Nepal trip when you're sort of 15-year-olds really catapulted you into that world in a pretty big way. So what happened next post Nepal with 15-year-old Dave King?
Well, on that trip, the leaders that were involved in it um, were sat at a place called Tengboche Monastery, which is one of the best views of Everest on the trek up the Khumbu Valley. Sat there having like open air afternoon tea, if you can imagine that. One day talking about how they could show how scouting's moved on from, the 70s, 80s, going away in old patrol camps and sitting around a campfire to some of the more adventurous stuff. So they came up with putting scouts onto the summit of Everest in 2007, which was 100-year anniversary of scouting being going since it was set up by Baden-Powell in 1907. So that's what really, dawned out of that expedition, was this kind of brainchild of again, Russ Parks, and he started to put a team together that might be interested in doing it.
Yeah, so it was you and 4 other guys, wasn't it, who were on the 2007 expedition, wasn't it?
Yeah, so the team fluctuated between, we probably had 12 or so people interested that did the first training back in 2000 in Scotland. So yeah, it went from 12 up and down numbers. Obviously, situations, lifestyle change, priorities in people's lives change over that 7-8 year period. But yeah, ended up with 5 people on the climb team when it came to leaving on a jet plane in 2007.
So how do you then, obviously, like you say, the team fluctuated in terms of people in, people out. That's a long period of time, 7 years, to prepare for one climb. What were kind of the key elements in preparing the team to be able to get scouts on top of Everest for the first time? What was that? What was the process?
So, well, I think, like with trying to plan anything where you've got a real focused goal, we took some specialist advice from people in the pool, firstly, when they're on that trip. So a lady called Liz Hurley, who used to document all of the Everest expeditions and some of the trekking companies, and tried to build a best case preparation that we could. And that included a Mount McKinley expedition to train in the extreme cold, and a Choi Yu expedition to train at extreme altitude. Those were 2 of the key elements that we wanted to get into that 8-year training plan, interspersed with our own climbing training, being on snow as much as we could. So going to the European Swiss Alps, a big scout centre in Switzerland called Kandersteg. We visited a number of times in between the larger expeditions. So that made up, that expertise kind of is what we needed to build the plan. And then we obviously saw that through as a team.
Nice. And then having to be a team and kind of know that you've got each other's back when things get really hard, because to be honest, like being on the highest mountain in the world is a pretty extreme place to be. Like what goes into like making a quality team then? Like what would you say are like some of the attributes or kind of things that make a good team for you?
Yeah, so I think I would say mutual respect across everybody that's there. Understanding strengths and weaknesses of your partners and your teammates is always good. And yeah, putting all of that together. Also, one of the things that we do a lot of is talk about the what ifs. So where you come up with scenarios and then try and plan your responses to those. So whether they be, the worst case scenarios. So we talked about teammates, perishing, dying, but that mentally prepares yourself for that situation. It's less shocking when you're there, or in the back of your mind. You've already got the thoughts that you'd come up with previously when you'd gone into that scenario or been given it by the group. So I think all of those things combined help. Certainly understanding people's strengths and weaknesses and being able to have that open, honest conversation in a group with mutual respect, that it just is what it is. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and hopefully the team that you've built, people have a good mix of strengths so that you're covering all the bases.
And I guess
really,
that comes down to like trust hugely, because if you're going to open up to somebody and say, oh, well, this is my strength and this is where this is a bit I struggle, you have to build up that trust, which doesn't come overnight. Like, you can't just be like, oh, hi, I'm Mike. Oh yeah, I trust you, like, to get me up Everest. Like, there's got to be some elements, if you're in a team like that, to be able to build that trust.
Yeah, I think inevitably, you become friends and you have a lot of contact outside of the planned training. So social world, but also on the training you do, you've got shared experiences of being in situations or being on mountains where all of that builds that bond, builds that relationship. And that's the same when you look at any relationship, really. Certainly that shared experience helps to build that link. And we ended up going on a number of trips as a team outside of our training plan because we wanted to propel our own climbing skills, and that just pushed on more shared experience with each other. So that ended up helping. I think if you look at any great team, and I would use Liverpool as the example at the moment, that ethos, that whole aura around where they are as a unit, I think would be my parallels that I draw. Someone like Jurgen Klopp leading from the front and obviously having clear respect from the players, and an open relationship with them, where they trust what he's doing. I think that's a parallel I could make in the current day. But
so, who you said about there was sort of the climb leader who was already thinking about this in 2007. When you guys went to do the summit push and stuff, what made him like a good leader then?
So Nath was just 100% solid, like one of those guys that if you thought there was going to be a jam, you had 100% confidence he could get you out of it, really, no matter what it was. It's just the way he portrayed himself as having very few vulnerabilities. And unfortunately, on the climb, on the summit day, he had some bronchitis and wasn't able to summit. So it left myself, Tim, and James, two of the other younger climbers, to go for the summit with the Sherpa guides on our own. But very much, missed him on the summit, as he'd brought us all to that stage. He'd been the most committed throughout the whole period, and luck dealt him a bad hand at the end there. And
so then, what would you say? Obviously, without the exception of actually getting to the very top, what would you say were like the high points, like the biggest highlight, and the kind of the lowest low point then for the expedition?
So, low point came when I wasn't able to go on the Alaska expedition to Mount McKinley, and whenever we go on a trip, we always do a presentation to everybody on our return. So our fellow climbers in the group that we are, or the parents of people that have been, and the friends and so on. And when the guys came back after successfully summiting on Mount McKinley, I remember being at that return presentation, telling myself that I didn't want to miss out on those opportunities again. So it was a lot of that swayed my mind with regard to the overall Everest climb, and talking to some family members that said, you will only get this opportunity once, so make it happen now, regardless of the cost involved and so on. So that was probably the biggest low for me in 2003, and then biggest high was as a climbing group, we decided to go and climb the largest mountain in the French Alps, Mont Blanc, 2006, because we still kind of felt like we didn't have the full credibility behind us to be taking on Everest as a mountain. So we wanted to summit on Mont Blanc, which we did, and the 2 weeks that we spent out there, again living with each other in a tent, was invaluable time in that build up to go on our expedition the following spring. So
nice. And then post Everest, then it kind of led to not only going on expeditions but then leading your own. So what then changes in the process? You've obviously built a team to be able to then, you've been part of a team that was built to be able to then summit. How do you then, what were the process that then took you into building teams that went on later expeditions, which you led?
So the leader team is still built up from that collective group of people that are in Hampshire Scout expeditions, and everybody has a common goal in that, and that's taking young people away on expeditions. So we'd come up with a location of Peru in South America. It had been previously done as the very first expedition of HSX in the early 80s, and wanted to try and reconnect some links there, and I'd never been to South America, so that was my main driving force with putting an expedition out there. When it came to building the team, there's a few people that I brought into that team. So Richard Bramall, who I'd worked with for a long period of time and was in the climbing group, was my current climbing partner. So he became the deputy, and then Alex Porter became the assistants in the admin and finance. So I tried to draw on people that had other skill sets that were complementary to mine. So I'm not a great planner or detail man when it comes to admin and finance. So Alex was really fastidious with making sure all of the numbers were correct and the emails sent out on time and regimented and that kind of stuff. I'm more of a doer and a leader from the front. And then Richard, or Bram as we know him, he's again hands-on, but he was in charge of the community project. So we ended up building a schoolroom at an orphanage, concrete floor, all the sides and everything like that. And
amazing.
That's the kind of skill set that Bram brought to the table, and he led that phase of the expedition. So skills that I could, delegate out those tasks and know that those areas were locked down.
I guess that comes back to that trust. That's that trust side again, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and with teams that I work with now, they seem to want to work for you, do a good job for you, and I think that's the ethos that you try and instill, and you bring those people in under your wing, and you need to be interested in their whole life, not about the one part you're asking them to do, but have a genuine interest in those people and put yourself out for them. If you expect them to put themselves out for you in the long run, that's what I find.
And so you go into Peru, you've got your leader team, and then a gaggle of 14 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
How do you make sure like that they're feeling part of the team and that they're in a situation where they kind of know what's going on and can react, because that's one thing, being on a mountain in Peru versus a hockey pitch. They're two very different worlds, again, for a bit of comparison. But like that's quite a thing to be able to build that as a team as well. So like what sort of things did you put in place to make sure like that operated kind of safe and efficient and was still fun as well?
So I think with making any team feel a part of something, you need to get group understanding and making sure everyone's on board with what you're trying to do. One of the ways that we do that in the building an expedition team, certainly around some of the places we might end up in these third world countries, markets, bazaars, with various people that they're going to come across, beggars and so on. We try to set out some group norms, which are like a collective agreement on behaviours, attitudes, right lines of communication, up to the leader team and so on, so that the young people can make those informed decisions really, when they're out confronted with a beggar in the street or somebody that's offering them something that they shouldn't be getting involved in, which happens on some of these expeditions. So we try and get the group involved in coming up with these set of guidelines that people should be abiding by, to keep themselves safe when they're abroad, or the same as if you're working towards an Olympic Games, then you're going to be working to a certain set of parameters, and having that lifestyle in that way, and that's been put together, designed to get you to the goal that you want to achieve. So although it's different risks and different decisions around expedition, and getting that group collective agreement, I think, and then if you ever have to come back and talk about it in a difficult conversation where they perhaps haven't made a right decision, then we even write it down and get them to sign against it. And if we have to have that conversation, it's like, we all agree to this. What went wrong on this occasion?
Yeah. And I love the fact that even on expeditions where stuff can get very real very, very quickly, it's not a dictatorship. It's not like you will do this, you will do this. Actually, it is the group norms, which is set out by the young guys as well. And actually to build that kind of relationship and understanding is so easy to then translate into the sporting world, because if you can do it and you're in some pretty sketchy places at the time, actually the ability to translate that to a hockey pitch, football pitch, rugby, whatever, that's something which I think a lot of coaches should be looking to do more of, and not just be like, these are my rules, this is it. Actually, these are the ground rules which we have set together as a collective. Like, the drill. This is how it works.
Yeah, exactly that. So I think that there's always some time where you need to directly communicate and be more, not dictatorship, but more direct communication. Yeah. But that's normally if something has gone wrong and you need people to do things straight away, to what you're saying, because you've got the more experience. But in general, I try to have, always maintain a two-way communication with everyone in the team, and it doesn't matter if it's the cleaner at my work, through to, you know, my senior instructor. Everyone's opinion is equally valid to me.
Yeah. And I guess going back to what you were saying from the Everest side, if you combine that like group norms with your what ifs, you're then pretty covered for most eventualities. Not necessarily going to cover everything, because you can't. There will always be something random that will come up that you can't deal with. But I guess if you squared everything else away, like, you're going to have the headspace to be able to manage that, I guess, or pick on different lines that you've already worked on.
That's right. Yeah. So we do quite a bit of scenario stuff. I remember a classic one that we always try to run with a team is what we call a hurry up and wait. So we might, you know, try and get a team to get to a certain place, whether that's like walking on an expedition for a certain time, but then we put an enforced wait in there. So, and it tries to replicate travel in the third world. So you might be at a bus station for a bus that's scheduled at 9, which turns up at like midday or the next day, just because kind of that's how it is. And it's things like that that can get inside people's head if they haven't prepared for it. And so it's as much about preparing them mentally for what they're going to come across as well as physically, by running them up and down the mountains and making sure they're fit enough to come along.
And I guess
certainly got to,
no, you go, Karen.
I think you've got to do a bit of work on that side as well, the mental side as well as the physical. I'm sure it's the same in the world that you work in.
And I assume that you're taking then a lot of those skills, like you say, into your work, into the activity centres. Absolutely,
yeah. So I certainly bring everybody that comes into the team, welcome wholeheartedly. Try not to have any cliques or anything else which is going to exclude people. So we have team barbecues at my house, social events, that we all come to. And again, that offer of inclusion is completely widely shared with contractors that work for us, that aren't directly employed by us. They all like to come along, and because they feel part of something bigger that we all pitch into in what we do. And that's really about enjoying their time at work. It's a big portion of our life, so if we can enjoy it, then all the better. Still keeping professional, but just the little things, really. Buying cake for the whole team once a week, or through the winter we do Soup Friday, where one team member makes soup for the whole crew that work for us.
Nice.
And we kind of share that round between us all, and yeah, it makes them feel a part of something. And when people think they're a part of something that matters, then they tend to be pretty passionate. So.
Mate, this has absolutely flown by. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and kind of your knowledge. And I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff to come out of this for coaches or players or whatever to take away and try and put into their own team. So, mate, I can't thank you enough. It's been a real pleasure. And I'll catch up with you soon, buddy.
No worries. Thanks, Mike.
Cheers, mate.
It's been helpful.
Bye.
Cheers.